Hey everybody, it's Rocky the Ramone, and I'm coming to you from the studio. I don't know if you can hear it, but right now there's bands rehearsing around us. So, what we're going to do now is I'm going to talk to a fellow Ramones fan and Patreon supporter, and her name is Bren. How you doing, Bren?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. We both are caffeined up to hell. And what'd you just have? Thai tea?
Thai tea.
And I'm having a gallon of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So we're both really, really wired on caffeine right now. And we're going to do kind of like a Patreon supporter member profile. So if you're out there and you're one of our Patreon supporters and you want to be a part of this, by all means, get in contact with me and we'll do an interview with you as well. So obviously, let's do the obligatory stuff here, Bren. How did you get into the Ramones?
I got into the Ramones kind of, I would guess, kind of late in life. So,
What age?
wow, probably 20, 29, 30.
Okay, and what year were you 29?
That would have been 3 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so that's...
Yeah.
Would you say that you got into the Ramones after they broke up?
I think so.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
a post-Ramones fan.
Post Ramones. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So yeah, got into them. My husband actually told me about them. Was super, super into them when we started dating. And, growing up when I did, that they were there, but not there in like a tangible way, because they had at that point, like in the 80s, late 80s, 90s, 2000s, become so part of the culture, you almost like...
They were a t-shirt band.
Yeah, it was a given. So it really wasn't until like I started dating my husband, and he was really, really into them, and I was like, okay, he's really, really into these guys, so I should probably see what's up. And so I did. I'm glad I did.
So was it music, or was it videos, or was it Rock and Roll High School?
Yeah.
What was the first thing?
I mean, you always hear, like, of course you always hear, like, Blitzkrieg Bop. You always hear, I Want to Be Sedated all the time.
That's what I mean, though, is like,
mm-hmm.
I tell this story a lot, so, I won't tell it too long, but my first exposure to the Ramones was a radio show back in the early 80s called the Dr. Demento Show, which was a novelty music show, and he launched Weird Al. I heard Teenage Lobotomy for the very first time on the Dr. Demento show.
Oh my gosh.
And I would make tapes of the show, so I'd listen to that every time I listened to that tape.
Wow.
So the very first time, can you pinpoint the very first time you can remember listening to a Ramones song and going, that's the Ramones? Not just hearing it and going, oh, I heard that song before, but...
Like when you first get it, when it clicks and you're like, I get it, I've got this. So that actually took a while for me, because like I had grown up, the way I grew up was kind of weird. I didn't listen to anything that was current. So I grew up sort of a little sheltered, where anything that was current was like completely, forbidden. So I listened to older things. And, I grew up sort of a lot of 70s, a lot of like the big sound, like Fleetwood Mac, and not that there's anything wrong with that.
AOR.
But yeah, some Mario, Mom Like Disco.
But the Ramones were 70s.
Right, but that never like hit the radar of what I was exposed to. And so I didn't even know that was a choice. Like I didn't even know that was like a musical option at all. And so it wasn't until, I guess, a few years back that, I realized how into it Dave was. And I had always like thought of, I graduated high school. I want to say it was like, I graduated in 2006 from high school. And punk then was like Avril Lavigne and...
The punk princess.
Yeah, and New Found Glory, and I thought that's what punk was. Because my parents were not punks. They didn't know anybody that was punk. They didn't do anything with punk. There was no punk. There was some new wave. There was no punk. So I thought, like, punk is Avril Lavigne, and I really hate that. That's just terrible. So
Did you know about the Sex Pistols, or were they just a name that you had heard in the periphery?
The way I grew up, there would be no Pistols or Sex or Pistols at all. Just, yeah.
Okay, so
would not have been a thing.
So, what kind of line of work or general life did Dave lead to make him such a punk aficionado?
Dave has always been a punk.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up with that scene, and as he tells it, he was like, Mom and Dad would just put on Jim Croce on loop for forever, and I'm kind of like, there's nothing wrong with Jim Croce. That has its place. That's cool. He's like, you don't understand. It was just so beige. It was all really, really beige.
Beige with brown patches on the elbows.
Yeah, a lot of paisley, a lot of beige. So I wasn't around for that, but just growing up the way I did, with the kind of, not participating in, popular culture of the 80s or late 80s, 90s, 2000s, just went back in time. So I picked up on all the beige, like Jim Croce and ELO, and I love ELO. I'm not going to shit on ELO. So I didn't know there was a choice. And
so Dave got you into the punk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As a little bit of a sidebar here, I wanted her to tell her own story, but Dave actually gave my experimental project, the very first gig that I ever did back in the early 2000s. Dave and his partner gave me a place to do my very first experimental gig.
Yeah.
So her and I know each other through him.
Yeah.
So Dave's got cred, and
Dave.
Dave's not here.
Dave-O.
Yeah. So yeah. So you're a post-Ramones breakup.
Post-Ramones.
And you're basically filtering...
Late to the scene, late to the party.
And your filter says... Basically, kind of like me growing up in the 70s, it was like... Even if you didn't know who Led Zeppelin... You didn't hear them. Mm-hmm. You knew who they were because they were this big monolithic thing. Elvis,
super influential.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
People like that. Mm-hmm. If you didn't hear them, you at least knew that they existed and they were a brand. Mm-hmm. So I kind of understand that, in that the Ramones it's like they've always been there.
They've always been, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't think about like the Wheel.
Yeah, I get you.
Don't think about a Wheel because they're everywhere, because they've always been there. So it's like become such a thing that's taken so for granted that you don't know how groundbreaking it was. So it was like, so Dave, to like put it in context, he would be like, yeah, we would always have to listen to this Jim Croce stuff in the 70s, and they were really into ABBA, and like they both had perms, and it was a super weird time. And then he was like, and then this album dropped. And it's like when I, having to look back, like being the late one to the party that I am, having to look back and putting that in context, like, because I know the context, like I know all the beige, I know all the Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles and everything that was going on then, is that's what I grew up with. Then hear this album drop that's completely unlike anything that's being played. Mm-hmm. That was when I was like, oh, I get it.
So what did he play for you first? The very first album?
He probably was all over the place.
Yeah. So it was different than the quotation marks punk that you'd heard before.
Yeah, I didn't know like, wow. That was a choice.
So in your head now, try to compare it to like what... when you heard, I hate to say it, real punk, can you tell everybody from your perspective?
Yeah.
Because from my perspective, it's completely different perspective. I already was biased against it.
Yeah.
And I already knew that it wasn't that, because I, had the Ramones pedigree, before. But being someone who just walks right into it, and both of those things are in equal standing as far as, it's like, no matter how much credibility the Ramones had, and this is a point that I really want to make to a lot of people who think there's like, how do you not know how important the Ramones were? Not everybody was born knowing how important they were.
No.
So not having any kind of preconceived notion about how great the Ramones were, despite not hearing them, describe how the Ramones sounded after hearing Avril Lavigne and Newfound Glory and stuff.
It was
the aesthetics.
It's just so authentic, and it like the more I listened, the more because I had, you know, as a kid I'd listened to really early rock, like really 50s and 60s foundational stuff, and the more I learned,
like who?
Oh, I mean anything that was played, like Question Mark and the Mysterians, stuff like that.
Okay. Would
the
you
Animals,
say the kind of the garagey or
garage
surf
rock? I loved it.
No, obviously,
Little Motown, you know, lots of that.
That's what the Ramones listened to.
Yeah.
So that's how you came full circle.
Yeah.
Well, we'll address that. Obviously, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's where I was trying to lead you. Go ahead and talk some more of them.
Then. Yeah.
I'll edit this part out.
I don't whatever you want to.
Go ahead. But from the 60s.
But yeah, so the more you listen to their stuff, the more you start to see how like they pull from like those older, earlier influences and put that into their music, and then you contrast that with everything else that's going on at the time, which by that point there was so much production in like a lot of the bigger bands, like the, you know, just Aerosmith, like big shows. And then you look at the Ramones, and it's like stripped down, and it's clean, and it goes back to those early rock influences. And that was kind of when it all sort of clicked. But then you look forward, and you hear in like the newer stuff that came after the Ramones, like their influence. And then you just start to hear,
like, name some bands like who you're talking about.
Like everybody pulls from them, you know. Everybody that has come after them has like used their stuff.
Since I do have a little bit of a, I'm not gonna claim to be like a music expert.
I'm not a music
But
expert.
what I'm saying is that there's a demarcation point. The Sex Pistols are not Ramones.
No.
Because the Sex Pistols were cock rock. The Ramones are not cock rock. And you see the I don't know if I'm even using that word correctly, demarcation point.
I think so.
The line between the Sex Pistols and the Ramones is the Ramones are like straight ahead, and the Sex Pistols bounce. And by the way, a plug, I explain all of that in my video, How to Play Drums Like the Ramones.
Nice.
And it's all about Sex Pistols are quarter notes and Ramones are eighth notes. And so what you get then is like Avril Lavigne, and I'm not trying to insult the Sex Pistols,
No.
but Avril Lavigne is Sex Pistols stuff. It's danceable.
Yeah.
It's quarter notes.
Yeah.
Skater Boy is like this, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, he wants a skater boy, right? So that's my whole point, is that when you do listen to punk, like for instance, Misfits are Ramones punk. But Green Day sounds more like Sex Pistols punk to me.
I can see that.
Even though they do a lot of downstrokes,
Yeah.
they do danceable,
It's very dancey.
boogie kind of oriented
And that's what
punk.
that's what I thought it all was. And I was like, this is not working for me. So I never pursued it any further. So I came a very circuitous route to becoming a Ramones fan, I guess.
So he played the music for you first.
Yeah.
What was your, I mean, you had seen pictures of them with with their.
Oh, they're iconic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see when did you see Rock and Roll High School?
I think we watched it probably pretty early on. It was awesome. Watched it a few times.
Okay, so did that just kind of fill in some blanks for you as far as just hearing stuff from the album and then seeing like not only them but how pop culture treated them at that time?
Yeah.